You're just leading by example, like truly leading by example, because you're taking your life and you're taking control of your life and deciding what's important to you and what you're going to pursue and how you're going to pursue it. And other people are going to notice that. The world is changed by your example, not by your opinion. This is a pretty profound statement, and one that inspired me and inspired both of us actually to want to record this episode, especially because right now it seems like the world is screaming for us to lead by example. And before we can do that, though, we really have to learn how to lead ourselves. So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about why I would say the world is screaming for us to lead by example. And maybe if we remember, I will tell you a little bit later who that quote is from. But for now, I'm going to turn it over to Adam to give our formal introduction to the show.
Thank you. Welcome to Settling's Not an Option. I'm Adam Nebbs, and I'm here with my co-host, Amanda Stanhope. This show is for anyone out there who feels like they've settled for an unfulfilling life, whether you've settled in a relationship, the work that you do, or how you feel about yourself. We're here to tell you that settling's not an option. If you're liking the show, please follow us on Spotify, or you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you have any feedback about the show or would like to recommend a topic, you can email us at cheers-to-not-settling@gmail.com. And finally, if you feel so inclined, you can donate to us on Coffee, where we're aiming to buy some new audio equipment.
Yes.
So as Amanda said, this week we're focused on the topic of leadership, and there are 3 topics that we're hoping to cover in our 15-minute timed segments.
Yes.
The first one is the philosophy that anyone can lead by example, why our world needs great leaders right now, and how to lead yourself so that you can lead others. So we haven't been with you guys for a while. On our last episode, we were talking about gratitude, and I specifically talked about like a guy I saw walking down the street with one arm, and I was saying like, hey, you can extend gratitude to just being grateful for having arms and legs. And after that, Amanda was really inspired to live with one arm for a while.
Yes.
And she broke her wrist. So she's now Iron Man. See?
Yes.
But talking to her before the show, she said she's more grateful for having, 2 arms. So
yeah. So I tested that theory out, and it is true. I think next time I'm just going to pass, though, on testing.
Yeah.
Whatever theory you throw out, I'm just going to pass on testing it.
Yeah. So anyone who's listening or watching, it's proven. Okay, Amanda's proven the point. You don't need to do it.
Right, exactly. Well, no. So that's part of the reason that we took a little hiatus here. Well, that's the main reason, I guess. Yeah. I got a little sidetracked with my recovery, but we're back, and we're gonna give it a go.
Yes.
And, so we might be a little rusty, but we're gonna give it a go.
That's it. And today I'm sick, so if I sound a little, I like to think sexier than usual, but if I sound a little, or I'm operating a bit slower than usual, I'm sorry. It's because I'm sick. But I'll throw over to Amanda to take away the first topic, and I'm going to hit start on the timer.
Perfect. Oh, I'm going to too, because I just wanted to see it too. But anyway, yeah, so the first point is just that anyone can lead by example. And I just wanted to talk about that a little bit and have a conversation about it, because I think it's so important for people to realize that we can all be leaders in something in our life. Because there's something in your life that you're a rock star at, whatever it is. And there's something in your life that gives you meaning and adds value to your life. And if you can find that thing and just really fully embrace it, and we'll get into discussing this more a little bit later, but you're going to just naturally start leading other people by example. And I think that so many people need to hear this message, because so many people feel stuck and have been, I guess, led to believe that they cannot be a leader. Because I think we have been shown an image and kind of sold an image of what a leader looks like, if you know what I mean. Like, I guess, what do you think? I'm going to put you on the spot, but I guess what would you think when you hear the word leader?
Well, I think the first thing that would come to mind would be the corporate executive.
Yeah.
I hate to say it,
Well,
but
that's what
like,
comes to my mind too. So
yeah, but
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
the Donald Trump, or the Australian equivalent is like the Mark Boris, on The Apprentice, kind of sitting in the chair and being like, "You're
Okay.
fired."
Yeah, yeah,
That
yeah.
kind of leader is what comes to mind.
Right. And to me, see, that's not even a leader at all. And I think
Mm,
that's the misconception and why it's so important to talk about it, and why people become so disenfranchised, I think would be the right word, or they
mm,
feel like they have no power to make a change in their life or to change their situation. And I think a lot of that stems back to the fact that they just feel like, again, I keep saying the same thing, but that they can't be a leader. And to me, those people that you're just describing aren't even leaders, because for one thing, they are misusing, at least the examples that you just gave, like if Donald Trump or whatever. To me, they just misuse their power to control people.
mm.
And that's not what a leader does.
No,
A true leader looks to people and tries to understand people and what their needs are and how they can bring the best out of someone else.
yeah,
And so I think that's kind of the disconnect that we've had, is that so much, because that's the first image that popped into both of our heads, is the executive of a company, say. And that executive might be a great manager, but that executive also, and I'm sure there's some great leader executives too, but the other thing I think of when I think of an executive is someone who is focused on the company and the company's bottom line and making the company look good and making sure that the company meets certain metrics.
mm,
That's managing. That's not leadership.
mm.
So to me, there could be someone working in the basement in the mailroom who's a much better leader. But that's not the person that pops into your mind, because that's not what we've been taught to believe. But that person in the basement could have a team who's sorting the mail, which is a very important job, but it's overlooked as being important. And they could have a team they're leading, and that team could be so inspired to run the most efficient mailroom in the world, and so that person could be outshining that executive as a leader in all respects.
Yes.
But we
Yeah.
would never think of that, or it's not natural, I guess, for us to think of a leader in that way.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think we think a leader is has to have a title. They have to be the
Yeah,
CEO or a manager or a team leader, and it's just not the case. And that's not to say, to your point, that by virtue of having a title means that you're not a leader, but having one doesn't mean you are, because being a true leader is very difficult. It
very
comes with
difficult. Yeah,
a lot of risk, a lot of responsibility, and it's exhausting. Like, I think I like how Simon Sinek says it comes with a lot of personal sacrifice. If
yeah,
you're going to call yourself a leader, I think it's a lot easier for people to call themselves a manager, but don't call yourself a leader unless
right,
you are willing to take on that mantle, because it's a big one.
right. Well, and you had mentioned, and I think it falls under this point. Yeah, it does. I was looking at what the other points were again. But you had mentioned too about how our structure, the way, excuse me, that our businesses are structured, or a lot of businesses are structured, don't allow for people to be leaders,
Mm,
because you're put in a role where you have to perform. Say you're a manager, but you're put in a role where you have to perform your work in a certain way, and you have to meet certain metrics and all these things, where all this pressure is put on you, where you're not allowed to really be a leader because you don't have time to be a leader.
yeah,
Because being a
yeah.
leader takes a lot of time too.
Mm,
Or,
it
well,
does.
if you're going to be a leader in that setting, I shouldn't say being a leader always takes time, but in a business setting, it does take time, because you have to take time to get to know your employees or your whoever is reporting to you. You have to get to know them, what's important to them, how they learn, and what work environment is best for them, and all this stuff if you want to actually be able to lead them. And you have
Yeah.
to be able to portray your vision to them in a way that makes sense to them. That all takes a lot of time.
I think that's a really good point, because a lot of the structures are built on this very like leader follower mentality, which there's a great book I read many years ago called Turn the Ship Around by Lieutenant David Marquette. And he used to be the commander of or captain or commander of a nuclear sub. And he basically, he got on this like very underperforming submarine, and he completely changed it from a leader follower structure to a to a leader structure, in which all of his people just came to him, and rather than asking him as the captain or the commander, you know, can I do this thing? He said, he would just get them to talk about their intent. I intend to do this thing. So kind of changing the language to that they've already made the decision and that they are leaders. They're going to make that decision, and they're just displaying their intent so he can maybe, give any feedback to it. And just all he would do is ask questions like, have you considered this and this and this? Rather than saying, I don't think that's a good idea, do this thing. He wouldn't order them. He would just say, yep, I think that's a good intention to have, and then they would do it. But yeah, I think a lot of businesses today do not empower people to kind of make their own decisions. And that's where a lot of micromanagement comes from, really,
for sure.
Which is really toxic and damaging to a lot of cultures.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, I mean, we're focusing on the business aspect of things, and maybe later, I'm thinking as we get into the other points, we can focus maybe on how it plays into your personal life too, but just the business atmosphere, the business world is just such a perfect example or starting point. But I think it spills over into every other aspect of your life too, because if you feel disempowered at work, then you're going to bring that home with you, and maybe you're going to be controlling it at home because you can't have any control at work. And so now all of a sudden that's spilling into your personal life.
Look, I remember that when I, in my previous marriage, I used to, and this is at the time when I felt more of a manager than a leader. My wife at the time used to say to me, like, stop talking to me like I'm one of your staff.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So
and
she
it's probably
recognized that right away.
Yeah. And it's probably because I was conditioned to a certain way, and at that time, I think I certainly wouldn't give myself the title of leader then. I was very much coming from the wrong direction and probably doing too much of that ordering that I think is not good. But yeah, it's true. And I hadn't thought about that until you just said it, that it would come home with you and then have probably a bad impact on your personal relationships as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess I wonder, for those who don't know, so Adam was a bank manager at his last position, was as a bank manager, or branch manager, I should say, manager. Was there even time in your day to really lead your team? Or were you so busy like putting out fires and things that you didn't even have time to lead your team?
That was, thank you for bringing that up, because that was the other point when you were talking about the structure piece that I'd thought of, and I was trying desperately to think about what that point was. But no, I didn't have time. It was putting fires out, and I think this comes back to the importance of structures, because when I went into that branch manager position, I spent a lot of time reflecting on how can I hone my skills as a leader. And I watched a lot of talks from Simon Sinek. I read that book, Turn the Ship Around, and I was ready to go in there and inspire. I just thought, I just want to build this beautiful narrative and just connect it to everything that I do and have my people pumped and ready to go, because I was going into a branch that was really underperforming, and I was like, I'm going to turn this place around. But the structure was not
there goes your ego.
There's my ego. Well, exactly. It probably did play a part as well. But but that structure did not give me the opportunity to do that, because I had to assume a whole bunch of other roles. I had to be on the counter serving. I had to do lending stuff, which wasn't the role that I should have been doing. And it did mean that I didn't have the time to coach my staff properly or inspire them or be out there and talk to them.
Right.
And that's ultimately why, another big part of why I left, because I was like, what I'm here to do, to lead, I can't do. So I
Right.
think companies need to reflect on, if you're going to give someone the title of leader, have you set them up in a way that allows them to lead, or are they really just taking on a bunch of other roles,
Absolutely. Because I think that's always the expectation is put out there. Well, and probably not even indirectly. I think it's probably directly said, like, you are here to lead the team. But it's
Yeah.
kind of just lip service, because do they really mean that? Because are they really going to give you the resources that you need to lead your team? Probably not.
No, they
I mean,
wouldn't.
some places do a good job of it, but I got to believe the majority don't.
Hmm.
And again, it's just because there's so much pressure. And I know in the bank, there's so much pressure, I'm sure, at meeting quotas and all these things
Yes.
and that ends up taking priority. But if you would reverse it, and that's probably what he talked, I bet that he might have talked about this in that book. If you reverse it and you focus on your people, the quotas are going to take care of themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because
That's
the
it.
people then are going to be working harder, and they're going to be working towards something that they feel is valuable.
Yeah, it empowers them. And that's
Yes.
the thing is they, that's a great story, because what happened in the end is that was an underperforming submarine. I don't know what quotas they need to meet there, but
Well, yeah, but there's got to be
that turned
something.
around being the best submarine in the whole fleet. And like
Okay.
for year after year after year, to the point of, that's why he's written a book and he presents talks all the time on it, because he changed it up. He went
Right.
against the grain, and people at the time were like, what the heck are you doing? Just tell your people what to do. And he's like, nope. And look at the outcome he had. It was amazing.
Yeah. Well, and that goes back to what you said from Simon Sinek, or however you pronounce his name. I feel like I slaughter people's names every time.
No, you got that one right.
Every time I say it, but because I know he talks about, or you had just mentioned that he talked about, it takes a lot of courage, but also vulnerability to put yourself out there and know that you're going to probably catch some flack from somebody up the line from you.
Yeah.
Probably going to be like, why are you wasting your time, or why are you spending, whatever they might say. And so, you really do have to put yourself on the line to be a leader in that type of situation.
Yeah.
So yeah, it
And
just, as you said that, I'm like, it kind of goes back to what you were talking about earlier with Simon Sinek. But I'll also relate it a minute to what I dealt with in the accounting world so I was at an accounting firm. Oh, I worked in accounting firms for 19 years or so of my life. So a long time. But part of my job was, and I was a manager at the last firm, or well, two firms, whatever, it doesn't matter. 2 firms ago, I had the title of manager. And so it was my job. I had to train people, first of all. But I also, a big part of my job was we had a budget that we had to, because all of our jobs, obviously there's a time budget because we build for our time. So you'd have this time budget you're also supposed to meet. And so I would have this conversation so often at the end of the job where the partner would be asking me why we were over on hours. And I'm like, I'm so sick of this. I sound like a broken record. We're over on hours because I didn't realize we were almost out of time. So I'll finish this anecdote and then we'll move on.
That's okay.
But it just goes back to, I guess, not feeling empowered and being given the resources you need, because they always would want to know why I'm over on hours. And it's like, well, you want me to train these people correctly, right?
Yeah.
Or lead these people, and I would try to lead them, and that takes more time. And it's going to take them more time if I'm not telling them exactly what to do, but I'm giving them more general guidelines and letting them kind of find their own way. All this stuff takes time. So you want me to do that. So you're going to have to accept the fact that I'm going to be over on my time budget, but you're still going to make a lot of money. It's going to be okay.
Yeah. Well,
because this person is going to be able to take over the job next year. So,
exactly. But this is the thing is, I guess, like, I like what Simon Sinek says there is, like, there's no metric for leadership. Like he said, you can look at KPIs of, as you said, like hours billed or whatever it may be. But like, there's no way for the business to say, okay, so you've hit your quota this week on leadership.
True.
But
Yes.
the problem with kind of the system as it is, where we're always like, did you hit the numbers that we needed you to hit this week? Is it would run in opposition to leadership, because it's like leadership sometimes, as you said, it takes longer than the time that we want to give metrics to, like, because you're ultimately trying to shape a person, like a really inspirational leader I had, who's still a really, really good mate of mine. He said, like, ultimately he wasn't just trying to shape somebody in a position in the company. He was trying to change their life. And he did. He changed my life for the better because he spent that time on leadership. So,
that's awesome.
If you want good leaders, you need to take the time.
Yes. So that's the message, I guess.
Now we're out of time.
Is don't just say that you want someone to be a leader. If you say it, give them the power to be a leader. That's it. I guess that's what we're trying to say. All right. So we'll wrap that section up.
Unfortunately,
man, that went by fast. We are back on this thing.
It did go very quickly, and we
6
did
weeks off, and we're right back at it. So, the second thing we're going to talk about is why our world needs great leaders right now. And I guess when I first started thinking about this topic, because of course I wrote a post about leadership that you can find on the Expectation Gaps website, but when I first started really thinking about leadership, and of course I learned about it in my accounting career, but I started rethinking it. It was because of the things that were going on at the time when I really started looking into it more. It was when COVID had hit, or was still kind of new. Well, not new, but I mean, we were still kind of in the beginning stages of COVID, and everybody's freaking out, and nobody knew who to look to for guidance, because everybody was saying something different about, what you should do, how bad COVID is, and all this stuff. The other thing that happened here in the United States, at least, is when George Floyd, I think that was his name, George Floyd was killed and by the cops, and that just caused a huge uproar here, and all these protests and things. And so people, again, were looking for a leader, and there was no real good leader to be found. And then more recently, we had here the Capitol riots, where all these protesters, I don't even think you could call them protesters, but I'll call them protesters, stormed the Capitol building of the United States and broke in and all this stuff. Again, I think all these things go back to people are just looking for someone to lead them, and there isn't anyone to lead, because everybody is so afraid of being politically correct, and everybody's so afraid of saying the wrong thing. And I just feel like it's left us in this position where we don't even know who to look to. And so I think leadership, my point in saying all this is that I think leadership is a more important topic than ever right now. And because we're kind of I feel like we're at a pivotal place in society where there's so many things, there's so much division, and there's so many things changing so rapidly that this is the time when we need leaders, and nobody can find them. So I just wonder what your thoughts are on that, or what it's like over in Australia, if you guys are having the same thing over there.
Yeah, we don't have good leadership here, and I'm happy to say that. I think a lot of people would agree. I think especially when it comes to politics, there's not a lot of great leaders out there. Like, I look at some examples like Jacinda Ardern or Justin Trudeau. I think they're wonderful leaders because they display so much care and compassion. And I think they're bold as well. It's so funny. And in the job that I used to have, the leader that I had, the manager that I had, because she was by no means a leader. Very poor example of a leader. But she was always talking about being bold. So whenever I think about now saying, "Oh, somebody's bold," all I can think is, "Oh, like no." Anyways, but I'm gonna reclaim the word bold in this instance to say, I just saw a post the other day about the Canadian cabinet, and I
Okay.
know it's the same in New Zealand, is where, you know, certain positions are, you know, the people in there like are from very diverse backgrounds, or who have a really lived experience in that field. It's not just this very you know, narrow male dominated cabinet, people who have no experience in the particular area that they're leading. Like those two countries are great examples of where, you know, they've trying to break the mold and say, let's be bold and actually take a different approach to it.
Okay.
But I digress. I guess what I was thinking about when you say, you know, we need more leaders, is we need less people that are self-interested, that are thinking, you know, I've now got the title of manager, you know, what can this do for me? How can I, you know, get all the fame and the glory and the money from it? We need people that are actual leaders, people that care about others and that take on that responsibility to say, I'm going to look out for you. I'm going to go first. I'm going to lead from the front. And I think, you know, that's something I tried to do, and it's very exhausting, but I tried to do that when I moved into that last branch manager position, which was I had to be vulnerable. I didn't know what I was doing in the job, mainly because I wasn't shown, and that's a whole different story. But, you know, but nonetheless, I had a team of 5 people that looked up to me, and I just threw myself out there and did the absolute best I could. And the reaction I got was, here's a guy who doesn't know what he's doing, who hasn't been taught what he's doing, but he's putting himself out there, being vulnerable and quite often, you know, riddled with anxiety because he's getting it wrong. But he's trying, and I'm coming from a place of because I want to try and ease the burden on the people that I'm trying to lead. And that's leadership, I think. And I'm not trying to say that from an egoistic kind of way, but that's how I view leadership: is you need to be out on the front lines, leading by example, showing your people what to do, and then they will follow you. And it's a lot harder than sitting in your big office going, I'm the manager and, you know, you guys do it all because I'm now above you. It's quite a lot harder. But the reaction is you get people that will follow you, not because of your position, but because they want to follow you.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other thing, and it kind of gets into our third point, but I just thought of it, or it just came back into my head, is I don't think, though, that you can really be a good leader by trying to be a good leader, if that makes any sense. Because as soon as you're trying to be a good leader, all of a sudden you are putting yourself first. Because like you just mentioned, like being a good leader means you're putting the other people, well, how did you say it? Not that you're putting other people ahead of yourself, but that you're taking part of your self-interest out of the equation to better someone else, or to help someone else become better, however you want to say it. So as soon as you are trying to be a good leader, you've already inserted your own self-interest in there. So
look,
and so I mean, I think maybe I'll save some of that conversation for the third point, because the third point is, let me see what it was again. It's how to lead yourself so that you can lead others. So that kind of gets into the third point, I guess. But that just reminded me of that when you said that. But I think too, what was I going to say? I think that the leader also, though, has to be able to teach his team how to be leaders. And I guess you alluded to that earlier, or not teach them, but allow them to be leaders. And I guess you alluded to that earlier too, though, because in that turn the boat around, or was that, or turn the ship around?
The ship around.
The boat, the ship, whatever, the water vessel of some kind. You turn that, because he talked about that. You said about like everybody was kind of a leader.
Well, I remember in like one of the courses I attended, they called it like the show me principle. And I like that, in that, you know, if you say, all right, I want you guys to hit your targets by doing this new thing, you know, so it could be approach the customer and do these 5 things, and then, you know, you're likely to get it. Don't just tell them to do it, go out and show them. And that's what you try and do. You demonstrate that, and then you've got a perfect live role play, I used to call them, where you can say, so did you see what I did out the front earlier with that customer? they came to me with this. I approached it from this way. That's what I was talking about. Did you see that? Yes, I did. Okay, well, how about we do that? And it's showing people,
Okay.
and ultimately, yeah, because it's so easy to just sit there and go, you will do this thing. Like, here's a piece of paper that tells you how to do it. No, get out there, show people how to do it.
True.
And then, they will follow you because they'll say, well, you're willing to do it. So I'll give it a go myself.
Well, and I think, yeah, that leads to another good point about why we need leaders right now is because so many people, and I guess it goes back to the quote that I said at the beginning, which is by Paulo Coelho. Did I say that one right?
Yeah, Coelho, yeah, that's it.
And it goes back to that quote, which is the world is changed by your example, not by your opinion, because there's so many people that are leaders or who call themselves leaders, but really they're just in the business of giving their opinion all the time, or
Yep.
or telling people how they should be living their life, or telling people how they should be doing their job or whatever. And that makes the people that they're trying to lead, then, because they're not leading by example, they're leading by opinion.
Yes.
It makes the people that they're trying to lead feel like they're not being heard or that they're not being understood. And so they're not ever going to follow that person.
Yeah.
And in fact, that's also going to harm them in other ways because they're going to feel so disempowered that they will not be able to lead in whatever way they could lead. Because as I said in our first segment, I think everybody can lead at something. Not everybody's meant to lead a company. Not everybody's meant to lead a bank, whatever. And not everybody wants to.
No.
But there is some aspect of your life that you can be a leader at, and we'll get into more in the third segment about how you can be a good leader. But there's something in your life, and if you can spot it, there's something in your life that you could be an excellent leader at, and it's going to add, if you go out on that limb and let yourself be vulnerable and let yourself have the courage to do whatever it is, I just really believe it's going to change your whole life.
Yeah.
And so I really feel, I keep coming back to this because I feel like it's just such an important point that people need to hear, especially because I do feel like everybody's so confused and so divided about everything right now. Nobody knows what the truth is about anything, or the truth that we're told changes every 5 minutes. And so nobody knows where to look for the truth. And so I think if you start finding your own leadership capabilities and leading in ways that are important to you in your own life, some of that's going to fall away. You're not going to get caught up in all of that nonsense. Yeah. And you're not going to end up with all this frustration that leads to these riots and these insurrections or whatever you want. All these things that are going on in our world, they're just crazy. They're all led because all that stems from people being so frustrated in their position.
Well, I think that an important thing there is why I think, I guess drawing again on like the business context is the importance of just being a human being.
Yeah.
And being emotionally intelligent, so like in the instance of say George Floyd, and look, I'm not in the US, and there's a lot of context, a lot of history, a lot of charged cultural issues there.
That
I think
we'll never understand.
We'll never understand, and I won't try and undermine it by trying to understand it because I couldn't. But it's to say, like, you need to, as a leader in that situation, have the emotional intelligence to know how to respond, to how to talk to people, because that's a really tricky situation to navigate.
Yeah.
But people look to you, and I think, who knows what would have happened if maybe there was a good example of leadership in that case. But, would the riots have happened? Would have they gone on as long as they did? If the leader had responded in the right way to galvanize the people to show we are going to take action, we're going to do something different. And I think the reason why it was such an important moment in history was because it was during a pandemic when people needed to stay home to avoid the spread of a virus. But they felt so passionate about a subject, they needed to go out and riot because they felt that it was just not being answered. So emotional intelligence is huge. And I heard a guy, his name's Mark Brackett.
Okay.
He's the director of an emotional intelligence team, I think, at Harvard or Yale. I think it's Yale. But he talked about a study. They did of 15,000 people, in which those people with high emotional intelligence, people were 50% more likely to be inspired by them and 30% less frustrated by them.
Okay.
So it just shows, I think, it's important to just be a human being and emotionally intelligent, not just somebody who's going to bark orders and, be self-serving. Yeah.
And I know we're at the end of our segment, but could you maybe take a quick minute and explain what emotional intelligence is, or what you think of?
Well, I guess there's lots of different types of intelligence. I guess it's the ability to regulate your emotional responses, especially as a leader. There'll be many times that are really trying where you'll feel like, this person's really grinding my gears. I want to get angry and yell at them. But, what's appropriate in a business context, the same could be said for leadership. When your kids are pushing you to the absolute limit, okay, what am I feeling? How can I regulate my emotions? And how can I then understand the emotional position of the person that I'm talking to and approach it in the right way, So what do they need from me? Kind of trying to understand them more than just coming from your normal response or thinking like how you would feel. Try and place yourself in their position and understand, what they're feeling and how you need to respond in that instance.
Perfect. Yep, that makes sense.
Oh, cool. I was like, hopefully that's a good enough definition.
No, that's perfect. Because I hear the term and I kind of have an idea of what it is in my mind, but I'm like, let's just clarify.
Yeah, fair enough.
What we really mean by that. So no, that was great. Yeah. All right. So are we ready to move on to the last topic? Okay.
Yes.
So the last topic is how to lead yourself so that you can lead others. And so this, I did, like I said, I was doing some research on leadership a while ago, and I boiled it down to 3 things, which I'll just list off, and then we can kind of get into a discussion about each, but just to kind of present, because I think these are 3 things that would really help you become an effective leader, again, in whatever capacity you want to be a leader in. So the first thing is to create a vision for yourself. So to create a vision of what you want your life to look like, what you want the world to look like, whatever. But also to know that that vision is going to change over time. I'll put that caveat in there. But so creating a vision, being the last to speak, which actually came from Simon Sinek, because he promotes that a lot, that idea of being the last to speak. And we'll come back to that. And also taking accountability. I think if you can do those 3 things, you can be a great leader, again, at whatever you want to be a leader at in your life. Do you have any thoughts on, thoughts on any of that? No, I'll circle back around to the creating a vision, but I didn't know if you had anything you wanted to say first.
No, I think I think those are 3 things that if you nail those things, you'll do very well as a leader.
Okay. And I think too, there's different leadership styles, and that's the other thing maybe to mention briefly, is that there's not ever going to be like only one style, because I think we all have a natural leadership style, but you might not even recognize it because it's so ingrained in you, you don't even know that when you're using it. But that style also might not work with everyone. So you kind of have to know, and I'm not going to get into all the different leadership styles there are. If you're interested, obviously you can find it on the internet. There's plenty of articles that will tell you what the leadership styles are. Or there's a great article on the expectation gaps that will tell you what they are. Woo, I'm back. No. So anyways, the point of that was that you might have a natural leadership style, but that doesn't mean that's going to work for everyone. I guess that goes back to the emotional intelligence too, is that you have to know where other people are coming from and maybe when to adjust your leadership style to match what works for them.
Well said. Yeah.
So I'll throw that out there, but then I'll come back to the create a vision. So when I say create a vision, I think there's 3 ways you can start to create a vision for your life. So the first thing, and this is so fundamental, I say this all the time, but you first have to know what your core values are. And there's a great website that can help you do that.
Number 3, watch out. This is the most plugged episode of all time.
It is. If you're not sure what your core values are, there's a great website you can check out. And I won't say what it is, but you could probably figure it out. But anyways. And that person who runs that website will actually help you figure out what your core values are if you get in contact with her. But anyways. I digress. I think that's huge because you have to know what you value in life because everything stems from that.
Yeah.
And then once you know that, you can start identifying specific areas in your life that you want to improve on. And then you can start make a decision to start working toward that vision. And this is what I was kind of alluding to in our last segment, where this is where you are not leading on purpose. You're just leading by example, like truly leading by example, because you're taking your life and you're taking control of your life and deciding what's important to you and what you're going to pursue and how you're going to pursue it. And other people are going to notice that. And there's like that ripple effect that we've talked about before. Other people are going to start noticing that you're doing that in your life and they're going to start copying you. And maybe in different ways, but you're going to inspire people just naturally.
Yeah.
So I think that's really the trick. And it's not easy because our egos get in the way. But I think that's really the trick. If you can truly do that without focusing on being a leader, I think you're going to become the ultimate leader.
Yeah.
If you can simultaneously, like somehow not focus on being a leader. But here's the other thing that I've found, and it kind of goes with be the last to speak in a way. But another thing I found is that you can't lead people until they're ready to be led.
Yeah.
So like you can't force someone to follow you. And I think too, we put too much pressure on ourselves to be a leader. And then we go out and we try to lead these people who they're not even in a position to be led, at least in that area of their life.
Yeah, well said.
They're already set up to not listen to you because, they're just not at that place. And I've learned this the hard way. And I'm still learning it. And it's something because I just have this need. It's probably some weird codependent need I have, but like I just have this need to help people. But the problem is sometimes I try to help people and they aren't ready for help or they don't even want help. Yet here I am trying to help them and it just backfires. Every single time it backfires. And I think that the same thing can be applied to leadership. And so that's probably partly why a lot of leaders fail, and especially leaders in business, if we go back to that, but because they are set into this position where they have to lead people because that's their job, but these people aren't even ready to be led yet.
That's very well said. Very good point.
And not that they're not ready to be led, but some people need to be managed.
Yeah.
Like there's some people where in whatever facet of their life, that's the facet of their life they need to be managed in, not led in. Because they're just never going to be good at that. We're not all going to be good at everything. We're not all meant to be leaders at everything. So at some point we're going to have someone manage us in certain areas. So I guess maybe that's an important takeaway too, is to learn when to be a manager and when to be a leader. Because you probably do need to go back and forth between the two, depending on what's going on.
Well, I think it comes back to the emotional intelligence piece because you're right. Like some people will want the big awe-inspiring, inspirational leader who will lead with a giant narrative and then, say, right, what are your actions going to be? How are you going to shape your destiny? Blah, blah, blah. Some people are like, whoa, man, like ease up. I just want to come to work, do my job and go home. I don't want to craft a vision for myself. And those times, that's fine. You can say, okay, well, that's totally fine. Do you want, I can give you some actions that, that I've seen have worked or whatever it is. Or, in that case, you can just say, do you want me to step away from trying to empower you? And do you want me to just kind of give you some actions and things like that? And sometimes people are fine with that. But yeah, it's emotional intelligence. But it's also very frustrating as a leader, because I think when you get into that territory of saying, all right, I'm going to be a leader, I want to lead by example, just expect that people are going to be very different to you. And that's where the frustration will set in. Like, it's being consistently, leading consistently, I think, in the face of people that are going to just be like, nah, I'm not trying. I don't want to do it. I'm not interested. Because, you can, it takes its toll. And there were many times when I was kind of in a role as a manager where I was going, oh my God, I can't be bothered with this team today. They have no interest in listening to me. They don't want to work hard. But that's half the battle. You've just got to find each individual's area of interest, what drives them, what motivates them. And also sometimes there'll be people that you're going to have to manage out of your business because they are toxic, not ready for that business context, and they will poison your team. And you need to, and it's hard, performance management is hard, but that's another part of leadership, saying, I think you're not at the point where I can have you in this business. I will do my best to kind of get you back on track. But if you're not willing to take the journey with me, I'm going to have to get rid of you. And that's just something you need to do as a leader.
Well, and even in your personal life.
Yeah, exactly right.
I mean, there's times you say, you're not ready to go down the same path I'm on. So, but good on you. Do your own thing. Wish you well, but you're going to have to hit the road.
I'm sorry, but you're fired. You're like, what
you're fired.
I'm your daughter.
We come back to that. See, it's come full circle, because we started out talking about that, Donald Trump and that other dude. I don't remember.
Actually, can I also put a little disclaimer there too? I mentioned Donald Trump and Mark Boris, who's the dude who runs the show here. Mark Boris is actually nothing at all like Donald Trump. So I am sorry if Mark Boris is listening, because of course he is.
Of course he is.
I totally respect you as a leader, because he's not Donald Trump. He's far from it.
I don't know who he is. So, but he's the one who would do "you're fired."
Yes.
Yeah. So he was the same role, but not the same. He didn't take the role on in the same way.
Man. Definitely not the same shade of orange. Anyway, sorry.
Got it. So maybe we'll talk about, because we're running short on time here, but
yes.
Should we hit be the last to speak or take accountability?
Maybe accountability?
Yeah, I thought so, because that's your core value, isn't it?
Yes. Hey, look, she's being, what a leader. She remembers what her people is important to her people.
My people. You're my people now?
Yep.
Well, do you want to talk about accountability since it's your core value, or do you want me to say something first?
No, I'm happy for you to say. I've taken enough airtime.
Okay. Well, I think, and I'm going to bring it back around to the vision, but so I think you have to lead by example. You obviously have to take accountability for your actions. That's part of leading by example. But so many people don't take accountability for their actions. And I've been guilty of it, obviously, too, throughout my life, where I haven't taken accountability, because it's very difficult, because your ego gets in the way. And plus, they're just worries. Like, you're worried maybe you're going to get fired, or you're going to ruin your relationship, or whatever. Like, there's all kinds of reasons that it's hard to take accountability. But I think once you have that vision and you've set your core values and you start making intentional decisions about your life, so that now you are leading by example, I think that it will get easier and easier to hold yourself accountable, because you're being more intentional about your decisions. And you have a reason for making those decisions. And so you won't be afraid to hold yourself accountable for the decisions that you've made. So I think that's how it all kind of comes back full circle.
Yeah, I like that. I think, as you said, if you live with values and then you kind of steer away from them or make a decision that's not aligned to them, then then you'd have no problem with turning around and saying, hey, I made a mistake there. But I think that's a big, important part of leadership, is to be vulnerable and to say, I made a mistake, because it humanizes you to your people. And that's the thing that, like, kind of I've looked up in some of the studies I've done. They call it in business psychological safety.
Okay.
There's an academic by the name of Amy Edmondson who speaks a lot about it. And she said it's really cultures where people feel comfortable to actually call out mistakes.
Yeah.
And the ones that, do well and have a really good learning culture are the ones where the managers and the team members say, hey, I made a mistake, I'll put my hand up for that. But the ones that, don't feel comfortable, they don't develop, they don't innovate. So it's super important.
Well, the innovation, that's a huge point too, because you can't have innovation without making mistakes.
Yeah.
It's not possible.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
exactly right.
If you want your business or even your personal life to be innovative in some way where it's just not stale. When I say innovative, I guess I mean that it's not stale. It changes with the times and it always remains relevant. I guess that's what I mean when I say innovative. And that's why I think you could apply it to your personal life too.
Yeah.
But if you, if you're not willing to make mistakes and admit to those mistakes, there's no way you can be innovative. And you're going to fall behind in some way.
Yeah, exactly.
Eventually that's going to catch up with you in some way. So, and I think we've probably, we could go on and on, because I'm sure we've both had those instances where we did not take accountability in some way.
Absolutely. and like we've gone over a little bit today, but I think, firstly, it's our first episode back. So, we're a bit rusty, but secondly, it's an important topic. And I think the points that we've covered are important. And,
it's been fun.
Next week,
so it feels good. It feels good to be back.
It feels good to be back, everyone. Thanks for hanging in there with us. Hopefully next week, we're going to get a guest by the name of Kylie Stone on the show, who I think would be a really fantastic person to talk to about leadership. But in the interim, if you guys want to flick us any comments, actually, that's not going to work, is it? Because the episode won't be published by the time we talk to Kylie.
Yeah, we got a little lag time in our publishing schedule here.
Message us. You can still message us if you want.
Yes, you can message us anytime. But
excellent. So should we wrap it up?
Yes. Now I have to remember. Am I doing the formal wrap up? I don't remember if I know what it is.
Because I can't remember the formal wrap up, so it's on to you. Accountability.
No. So I guess we'll first of all say thank you for sticking around and listening to this. We hope you got something, at least one thing out of it. We hope you can take it and start leading by example in some way in your life. And again, you can find us however you're listening to us now or watching us now. You can also find us on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music. And you can also, if you're so inclined, jump on over to Coffee, which there will be a link in the description, and donate as little as $1 to help us keep this thing going. You can also find us on LinkedIn, is probably the easiest way to find us if you wanted to get in contact with us. But we appreciate you guys being here. And I guess with all that being said, we'll just say cheers to not settling.
Cheers to not settling.
All right, take care.
Bye.